The vast islands of the East Indies, full of natural resource wealth, it is the most precious jewel in the Dutch crown. Part of its colonial empire for roughly 350 years, the over 10,000 islands and immense amount of distinct cultures and languages have been bound together by little more than the colonial administration. But something not bound by colonialism is that this video is sponsored by Paradox Interactive. They've provided me early access to the new DLC Thunder at Our Gates, which includes focus trees for Australia, the Dutch East Indies and Siam, with a new feature of army headquarters. It is already out now, so if you're interested, click the link in the description and use code SWINSPAL at checkout to further support the channel. Back to colonization, with it being horribly mismanaged, and as the Great Depression has hit our export-oriented industry hard, the strong control from Europe is starting to wane. Nationalist movements across our archipelago are growing in popularity, both those inside the structure of the administration and those acting only against it. This wind of change has culminated with the Hoi4 petition. The Indonesian nationalist officials, part of the People's Council, which serves as the democratic parliament of the Dutch East Indies, have brought forward a petition calling for autonomy and self-governance for our colony. During the 140 days of debates, some recovery from the Great Depression was seen, with investments into Javanese and Sumatran infrastructure proving successful at reinvigorating parts of the economy. With the debates eventually over, the petition would pass through the Volksraad with the support of moderate Indonesian and Dutch officials. But pushing it further proved impossible as the Governor-General, with support of the Dutch government in Europe, vetoed the petition to keep the status quo. This proves the hardline nationalists right. We can't rely on Dutch goodwill. We need to take matters into our own hands. The underground revolution will begin. It consists of several independent groups across our islands, but we will attempt to unite them. Establishing our HQ on Borneo, its jungles will protect us from the East Indies Army while also being in a central position to reach out to the other groups. One of these groups were the local Sulawesi nationalists, who we supported to organize strikes and riots, ensuring their population's loyalty to the revolution. The same was seen in the state of Medan and Riau on Sumatra. This also allowed us to set up militia bases in both regions to fully take control of the states once we declare independence. But only strengthening ourselves won't win us the war. We need to weaken the colonial government too. Thankfully, the revolution runs deep, even in the colonial army. Mostly in the lower ranks, but even some high-ranking members have been convinced to join our rightful cause. Continuing to spread our militia bases on Sumatra and securing some military armaments production over in our HQ, we finally stand ready. Led by the leader of the people, Sukarno, we declared independence from the Dutch colonialists, securing half of Borneo, Sumatra and Sulawesi. Obviously, the Netherlands hasn't recognized our freedom, so we must continue to take control over more regions to fully topple the government. All while making sure to balance escalation, as we can't risk full-on Dutch military action. With our revolution made up of various militias, we must make sure to organize them thoroughly as to achieve victory. We already have 3 of them under our command, but there are so many others we could gain support from. Starting immediately with utilizing them, we prepared the infiltration of Western Borneo. 30 days later, the operation was launched, being a quick success with the Dutch kicked out of the island at the cost of some escalation. Only a month later, we saw our next expansion into Atay, a region having long had a developed resistance. Then, using our last militia, we also secured the rest of Sulawesi in a high-risk operation. Having now used all our militias and with only 2 in training, we can use this downtime to de-escalate the situation, ordering a ceasefire for 120 days. We used this peace to build up more arms factories to reach the same level as the East Indies Army. Reaching out to more militia groups, we formally recognized Hoi4's battalion, with its demands being promotion through our ranks. We also gained more support from the Sulawesi fighters, with them transferring over some of their troops to support our coming efforts on Sumatra, in return for promised investments on their island. Waiting out the last bits of the ceasefire, we saw through political efforts of stabilizing our revolution, as it is far too splintered at the moment. With 6 militias on the field, we prepared the most important infiltration yet, the infiltration of West Java to encircle Batavia. Under the command of Hoi4, the Sunda Strait was crossed, contact was established with local nationalists, and the region was seized. For this success, we immediately promoted him to Field Marshal, gaining the full loyalty of his militia. Attempting to continue on our success, we prepared and executed an infiltration of East Java, but this time the Dutch reacted and destroyed our effort. It would only be on our third attempt that we had gained enough know-how and luck to succeed with seizing the region. Obviously, our moves have caused escalation to spike, reaching a point of no return. There's been an attempted assassination on Sukarno, and worrying news have arrived that the Netherlands is preparing a full-blown military campaign less than 4 months away. Since this will happen whatever we do, our best bet is to prepare to face them head-on. Needing the support of every militia group for this, Sukarno has been forced to cooperate with Tan Malaka's group, the strongest one of them all but a communist one, gaining their support only through massive political concessions. Together with more deployment of revolutionary divisions, we've assembled an army of 160,000 deployed men, most around Batavia, to execute our war-winning plan. That is, as soon as the full-blown war began, we pushed towards the city, catching the East Indies army off guard and arriving to the doorstep of the capital within a few hours. This is where Dutch greed will help us, as having mostly only developed Java, if we capture the whole island, now with only Batavia left, we will have captured the only thing that they cared about. Meaning we will have won the war. After reorganizing our forces, we launched this final offensive. Of course, urban warfare is difficult, but with a nationalist civilian behind every door, there wasn't much the Dutch could do to stop our advance. So, on the great day of the 14th of December, a Treaty of Independence was signed in Amsterdam, as the Dutch were forced to recognize their defeat. Finally, the Indonesian people are free to rule themselves, and while a stable political order has yet to be achieved, economic reforms have already started. They even did during the Independence War. With the Great Depression significantly hurting our exports, the war would be the final nail in the coffin to kill all our old supply chains. Instead, we've decided to open up to the expanding Asian market. Cooperating with Chinese businessmen, many of them would seek refuge from their own war on our resource-rich islands, bringing with them a construction boom. We also saw through increased trade with the Japanese Empire, in dire need of rubber and oil to fuel their expansion plans. Lastly, we also secured contracts with Australian companies, thanks to a huge geopolitical shift. The United Kingdom has fallen to communism, leading to much of its dominions breaking free and having to find new economic partners. Still, on the resource front, we continue developing infrastructure on the Bangka-Belitung Islands, even opening an aluminium factory to diversify our exports. Lastly, the demands of the Sulawesi militias were met, and we expanded our education to improve our horrible research capabilities. During all these reforms, there was substantial movements on the political arena. Sukarno and his supporters in the Nationalist Party of Indonesia would attempt to elevate him to president for life, but a second movement, the communists under Tan Malaka, would constantly stand in the way. With his popularity only going stronger since his militias played an important role in the independence war, we eventually reached the point of no return. Tan Malaka couped the Sukarno government and established communist rule on our vast islands. Putting it in a global context, this has been seen across the world. We already know about the UK and its decolonization efforts, spreading communism across the globe. But after the fall of the Soviet Union in a second civil war, the exiles would help set up socialist republics in Germany, Czechoslovakia, Mexico and Ethiopia. While this change in leadership will obviously change much of our future, most economic reforms remain similar, and this is where our focus will be for the time being. We would see some decentralization policies implemented immediately, spending more of our money on the sugar economy outside of our industrial hubs. And despite a more ideologically determined leadership, we continued our export policies, keeping and even increasing our exports to nations far from aligned with communism. Tan Malaka would then announce maybe the most important reform yet, the planned full integration of all our islands into the Republic. While most important islands are already cored, Borneo isn't, and if we want to achieve the goals of socialism, complete unity is needed. But to actually complete the integration, we will need to further decentralize our investments. Something we went and did straight away with a substantial land reform. Being enough to begin coring at least Borneo, the future for our economy looks brighter than ever. This gives us the freedom to begin focusing on foreign policy, where Tan Malaka has a clear vision. We need to turn our revolution into a Pacific revolution and liberate the people still under colonial rule. And if everything goes according to plan, unite the Pacific under socialism. Having already started investing into a spy agency, the goal is to instigate socialist thoughts across the Pacific to stir up revolution. Though our plans would start in quite a strange way, demanding the integration of the now free Malaya's People Republic into our own republic. With their leadership aligned more with Stalinist thought compared to our globalist ideas, they refused, leading to our first declaration of war being against fellow communists. Having trained up an army of 200,000, we stand more than ready to unite Borneo. However, with no navy compared to their 3 to 5 ships, invading peninsular Malaysia will be impossible. Thankfully, we won't need more than a cheap navy to be able to cross over to Kuala Lumpur. But starting first in Borneo, outnumbering them 6 to 1 on the western front, we easily broke through, capturing Kuching and continuing eastwards. Encircling their only division and meeting up with our eastern forces to capture Brunei and Limbang. With the element of surprise now gone, we faced some tougher defenses on the last part of Borneo, but not something our forces couldn't overcome, defeating them all. Having gained naval superiority thanks to our cheap ships, we started planning the invasion of peninsular Malaysia. With it taking some time though, we would continue building up towards our vision of a united Oceania by forming the ASEAN Preparatory Front and purging all Stalinists in our ranks as they sympathize with the enemy. This would backfire almost immediately as it ostracized us from most of the global socialist community. The Union of Britain would send volunteers to Malaya while Germany went further and let them into its faction, putting us at war with the European power. Still, we continued as if almost nothing, naval invading around Singapore to encircle the plenty of forces in the city. After spending some weeks clearing them out, we were forced to conduct a second naval invasion to advance, landing in its northeast. Then, after securing a beachhead and meeting enemy forces, we concentrated our offensive in a pincer movement straight to the other side of the peninsula. Being a success, the final parts of the Malaysian offensives have arrived. With massive labor strikes in support of our invasion across their lands, the government capitulated, leaving only foreign forces left. Baiting them into a counterattack, they left Kuala Lumpur open for taking, granting us the final victory. While an incredibly important step towards our goals, it is only a small one in the bigger picture, and this shows how unprepared we still are. With an army of less than 500,000 only consisting of weak divisions, we won't be able to fight against the great powers. Fortunately, reforms have already begun, having had painfully bad recruitment policies, even running out of manpower during the war. We have adopted Sudirman's plan of increasing conscription. We will arm the revolutionaries, the youth and the students, with the goal of a 1 million man army. While mass assault is our doctrine, we also need good divisions, which is where the expansion of our military industry plays an important role. Having gained enough production to sustain it, we can equip our divisions with support artillery and add a whole new regiment with infantry gun support, of course. 6 months later, in September 1942, the reforms have turned into a great success, with the 1 million men army approaching rapidly. And with this, we are feeling ready for the next expansion. With relations with other socialists already thrown out of the window, our next invasion was purely economical. We invaded the Tamil Sinhalese Socialist Federation to further consolidate global rubber supplies into our nation. Having no army, all they could do was join the German faction before falling to our naval invasion. Securing such a quick, decisive victory, we felt ready to uncover the most significant operation yet. For the last 2 years, we've infiltrated Australia, spreading communist ideology to its people and arming local militias. With more than a majority of the population in support of our side, thanks to the economic downturn of the dissolution of the British Empire and the prospect of a Japanese invasion, we are ready to instigate the revolution. It would only take 6.5 hours for the government to be overthrown and our communist allies to gain power, immediately joining our Asian front and leaving the American faction and wars, shooting up our faction to the 4th strongest in the world. But it has only started. We sent our spies to our next target, Yunnan, while simultaneously launching an invasion of Burma, another communist ally to the Germans. The fruits of victory continue to taste delicious as we've established a secure foothold in mainland Asia. Our victories are even so decisive that when the World War escalated further, with the German and British factions uniting, the Malaysian leadership accepted our terms of submission, ending all resistance in the region. And this opens up the next step of the plan in a critical time too, as we're having massive resource issues and are at war with far more countries than before. This next step is to realize the Federation of Asia, uniting our allies into a single unitary republic. As this will take time, we continued operations in Asia in the meantime, invading the collapsing British India to secure some of its steel resources along the Bay of Bengal. Having both run out of manpower and facing a horde of Al-Hind allied uprisings in the west, we could easily secure Bengal and continue a bit further. This was when the news of the collapse of France to the communists reached us from Europe, meaning French Indochina is free for taking. Because of course it's impossible for the British to already have troops in the region. Back to the home front, the Republic of Asia has been proclaimed and we've initiated the integration process of Australia into it. While waiting for that and our communist revolution in Yunnan, we expanded our operations in India, declaring war on the Sultanate of Al-Hind. Having no real organized army after the chaotic uprisings in India, we could sweep through their defenses straight to Lucknow and Delhi, only having some hard time where they had the most concentrated forces. With the southern offensive just as successful, with the fall of Bombay, several of their allied dominions and Madras, all that eventually was left was their heartlands in Pakistan. But by then their army had already been defeated, so despite the favorable defensive terrain, our final victory in India was guaranteed. Sometime during this war, the international community rejected our formation of Asia, still recognizing us as Indonesia. But why should we care? Australia has been integrated and Malaysia follows soon, making us the third economically strongest nation after Russia and the United States. And with the successful communist uprising in Yunnan, we continue to grow, now into China. This is where the war against the Japanese co-prosperity sphere begins, with the goal of reaching all the way to the Japanese main islands. It starts incredibly small though, fighting against the non-aligned Guangxi clique along our small border and reaching quite far before getting stopped by bad supply. This is where our secret weapon comes into play. Having infinite amount of rubber, we've started building an air force, specifically to use paratroopers. With 10 already trained and deployed, we will overrun all Guangxi defenses from the sky. Upon landing, it all went incredibly quickly. With the fog of war, it was difficult to know what exactly happened, but eventually it calmed down and we found ourselves having occupied the city at the loss of 4 paratrooper divisions. But it's all worth it, because with supply established, the Guangxi forces were easily dispatched off and we arrived to the Japanese front. With them suffering from really bad supply, we were able to advance against them despite their superior numbers. It was only once we reached far into Hunan that their supply situation got better and our offensive had to stop. But it wasn't without its victory, as at one point we overran their headquarters, capturing a 5-star general. While we can't continue on the flank, we've already opened up a second area for offensives, spreading the communist revolution to the Guangdong clique, therefore opening the road along the coast. How important this coming offensive will be is questionable though, as the Americans have already been faster and landed on the Japanese mainland. Still, at the very least, it will serve as a brilliant distraction. And indeed, that was what it would turn into, as soon as we got a significant breakthrough, advancing rapidly through Fujian, the Japanese capitulated to the American invasion. In the following peace deal, we played a minor role, only taking over Thailand and gaining recognition for our conquest in China. Though we did manage to poach parts of the remaining Japanese navy before the Americans blew it up. With this victory, all our planned conquests in our region have been achieved. Well, without that of the Philippines and New Zealand, who will come by themselves through communist coups, of course. While we could just sit down and wait for the European communists to collapse on their own, we don't trust the Italians with defeating the UK. So, time for the long walk to Europe. We've arrived to Europe with all being left the Union of Britain, while the original plan was to invade through the south, with the Italians not wanting to give us access to their air bases. We've instead allied Ireland, which also finds itself at war with the British. After building up the island's infrastructure, sending over our 8,000 strong air force and the captured Japanese navy, we are ready for an invasion in the north instead. It was only through a miracle that we gained enough naval superiority, and so the invasion began. vision has been achieved, Oceania is liberated from the imperialists, and by being united as one, we've surpassed the industrial might of the United States of America. So I want to once again thank Paradox Interactive for sponsoring today's video, and if you yourself want to liberate Oceania or maybe side with the Dutch instead, then make sure to click the link in the description to buy Thunder at our gates. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed today's video and I'll see you in the next one.